The morgue was colder than memory. Fluorescents hummed, metal trays sighed, and the smell of antiseptic clung to my gloves. I signed the log, glanced at the toe tag, and forced myself not to read the name twice. 24 hours earlier, his ECG had gone silent. One merciless flatline. Yet something about the room felt unfinished. I brushed frost from the zipper and felt the kind of stillness that presses against your eardrums. No ventilator hiss, no monitor chirp. Only the soft click of the clock, counting nothing. I told myself the silence was mercy. Then, deep in my chest, a pulse of doubt. Why did the air feel charged, like a storm holding its breath? When I leaned closer, the stainless steel surface mirrored my own uncertainty. Eyes tired, jaw tight. Cases like this haunt you. Shock, collapse, the resuscitation that failed. We'd watched the electrocardiogram draw its final, merciless horizon. Still beneath that tag and sheet, a warmth lingered where there should be none. I pressed 2 fingers to the wrist, expecting the same emptiness. Nothing. Then the smallest resistance in the skin. Elasticity, not wax. A trick of the mind, I warned myself. The dead teach you to mistrust hope. I stepped back, counting breaths I didn't have to take. The chill bit harder, the humming light grew louder, and in that sterile quiet I realized something simple and terrifying. I was afraid to blink. Outside, thunder rolled like distant furniture. Inside, metal ticked and settled. My pen slipped against the clipboard, leaving a stuttered line, a mimic of the heart tracing we never expected to see again. I pulled the zipper halfway and stared into the dark. What happened next would challenge everything medicine thought it knew. My name is Dr. Mara Quinn, an emergency physician in a city hospital where night shifts blur into rumor. Our patient was a 56-year-old supervisor who collapsed after a long day. Paramedics reported electrical silence on scene. In the ER, repeated ACLS cycles bought time, not rhythm. The ECG finally flatlined, clean, unbroken, definitive. He was pronounced, documented, and transferred. Families ask for impossible answers. Doctors give the possible ones. We explained hypoxia, refractory arrhythmia, the brutal mathematics of downtime. Paperwork filled the gaps compassion can't. He lay in the morgue for 24 hours. No ventilator, no vasoactive drips, no false hope. By every standard we respect, the story had ended. But medicine rarely writes in full stops. The hospital at night has its own weather. Condensed breath, echoing carts, rumors that travel faster than orders. I walked back to the morgue to finalize a detail that wouldn't let me go. The toe tag, the sheet, the chill, rituals of completion. Yet that uneasy charge remained, an atmospheric static clinging to metal and memory, needling the disciplined part of my brain. Here's a curiosity that unsettles even seasoned clinicians. The so-called Lazarus phenomenon, auto-resuscitation after cessation of CPR. Rare, controversial, and often misunderstood. It's been documented in case reports worldwide. Explanations range from delayed venous return to dynamic hyperinflation releasing at last. Skeptics dismiss it, believers respect it. I stood between those camps with one gloved hand on a zipper. If incredible medical mysteries with shocking twists keep you up at night, you're in the right place. Before we dive deeper into this shocking case, make sure to subscribe, hit like, and comment what city and country you're watching from, so you never miss the next shocking story. Because what happened after those 24 hours wasn't luck. It was something stranger. The first call came just after 7 p.m. 56-year-old male, collapsed at work, unresponsive, no pulse. I remember the cadence of the radio voice, measured, already resigned. The paramedics wheeled him in, chest rising only from bag mask ventilation. His skin was waxen, sweat clinging like cold dew. The ECG pads crackled against his chest, producing a blunt, merciless line. One continuous horizon, flat, indifferent, final. Charging, 200 joules, the resident barked. The defibrillator answered with a violent crack, his body arching before slumping back, still flat. Compressions resumed, each thud echoing against the walls. I counted the cycles like a mantra. Epinephrine, compressions, pulse check. Each minute lengthened, every silence between beeps heavier. Hope bled out with the seconds, but still we pressed on. His wife arrived mid-code, escorted by security. She clutched her handbag like a life raft, eyes searching for permission to hope. I shook my head gently, lips pressed tight, words caught behind my teeth. How do you tell someone the man they kissed goodbye that morning is already halfway gone? She leaned against the wall, whispering prayers I couldn't hear. A nurse whispered, "Doctor, it's been 40 minutes. Protocol dictates 20 to 30 for refractory arrest, but sometimes we stretch the boundaries, unwilling to fold the last card." The monitor continued its cruel stillness. Sweat ran down my back, soaking my scrubs. "Another round," I said, more to myself than anyone else. We fought a battle the numbers had already decided. When the heart flatlines, it's called asystole. It's not a rhythm, it's silence. Unlike ventricular fibrillation, you can't shock silence back into music. Drugs like epinephrine squeeze the vessels. Compressions simulate a pulse, but without intrinsic spark, it's futility. Every flatline teaches the same lesson. Death is not loud, it's absence. And absence always wins, until it doesn't. Time of death, 1948. The words landed like lead. We stopped, gloves snapping off, monitors powered down. The room exhaled a long collective sigh. A body once central became an object, shifted gently onto a stretcher, zipped into anonymity. Paperwork followed, sterile and unfeeling. Death, documented in neat black ink, doesn't account for the echo it leaves in your chest. His wife sobbed into a nurse's shoulder, the kind of sound that shakes walls. I signed the death certificate with hands that didn't feel like mine. Behind me, the monitor screen went black, its reflection catching the hollowness in my eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, the oldest lie in medicine, because no one is ever truly sorry enough. She didn't answer. The body was taken to the morgue, temperature set to 4 degrees Celsius. Cold steel trays swallowed him whole, as they had countless others. I remember pausing, palm against the chilled door, whispering a silent promise. You deserved more time. Little did I know, time wasn't finished with him yet. And neither was his story. If this shocked you, type the word shocked in the comments. Because what came after the flatline defied every explanation we trusted. The morgue is supposed to be silent, but that night it hummed. The compressors groaned, metal expanded with faint clicks, and somewhere water dripped like a metronome. The patient's body lay still under the sheet, tagged, sealed, and officially forgotten. But medicine isn't just about data, it's also about instinct. And mine whispered that the story wasn't finished, no matter what the paperwork claimed. Nurses who'd handled his transfer said his skin didn't cool as quickly as expected. One even swore she felt a trace of warmth near the sternum, but dismissed it as imagination. Morgue staff learn early to smother doubt. Doubt slows efficiency. Yet small details piled up. Elastic skin, faint residual color. Each clue insignificant alone, but together they created static, like sparks before lightning. After death, the body cools through a process called algor mortis. Typically, temperature drops about 1.5 degrees per hour until it matches the room. Rigor mortis stiffens joints within 4 hours. Lividity settles blood into purplish pools. But his body betrayed these rhythms, still pliant, temperature oddly preserved. Such anomalies raise eyebrows, then shake foundations. Medicine hates irregularities. Death is supposed to be predictable. By midnight, a rumor had spread across the night shift. The man in drawer 3 looks different. A junior orderly claimed he saw a flicker beneath the eyelids, then retracted his words, embarrassed. Still, whispers gained traction in hallways, ricocheting off vending machines and empty waiting rooms. Skeptics rolled their eyes, but even they peeked into the cold room once more. His wife refused to leave the hospital. She sat in a dim corridor, rosary beads tangled between trembling fingers. "I can't go home," she murmured when I checked on her. Her conviction unsettled me. Grief usually bends into fatigue, but she radiated a strange certainty. "He's not gone," she insisted. I wanted to disagree. Instead, I stayed silent, listening to the hum of fate. I returned to the morgue past 2 a.m., a clipboard in hand. My footsteps echoed too loudly, the sterile floor reflecting every doubt. Drawer 3 groaned as I pulled it out, the cold hitting my face like a slap. Beneath the sheet, the shape was both ordinary and unbearable. I lowered my hand toward his wrist. Hesitant, half ashamed to be checking again. No pulse, nothing. I forced a dry laugh at my own nerves, but when I touched the chest, I swore it rose a fraction, as if the body itself sighed at the intrusion. Hallucination, I muttered, yet my heart hammered against my ribs, refusing the easy answer. Silence magnified into thunder. I checked again, my fingers trembling more than I wanted to admit. The monitor in the corner, long powered down, blinked once. A rogue surge, a ghost of electricity. I froze, throat tight, eyes glued to the corpse before me. Static filled my ears, though the room was quiet. Then, faint and undeniable, a sound emerged from beneath the sheet. The whisper of air escaping lungs that shouldn't have moved at all. I stumbled back, clipboard clattering to the floor. For a second, I doubted my own sanity. But when I leaned closer, there it was. Subtle, rhythmic, impossible. The man declared dead for 24 hours was breathing. I froze, every rational instinct screaming denial. Bodies don't breathe after 24 hours in the morgue. Yet there it was, the subtle rise and fall of his chest. I pressed trembling fingers against his carotid artery. For a moment, nothing. Then the faintest flutter, like a moth brushing against skin. A pulse. Weak, erratic, but real. My knees nearly buckled. Code blue to the morgue. My voice cracked through the intercom. Within minutes, nurses rushed in, their expressions shifting from annoyance to horror as they saw what I had seen. "Check again," one demanded. 3 hands confirmed it. Pulse present. Shock rippled through the room. It wasn't just me losing my mind. The dead had returned. What could cause such a phenomenon? The Lazarus phenomenon, or autoresuscitation, remains one of medicine's most unsettling mysteries. Theories suggest trapped air in the lungs releasing slowly, or delayed medication effect reviving cardiac activity. But none explain survival after an entire day. Case reports exist, yes, but they are rare, contested, whispered, more than studied. The ECG machine was wheeled in, pads slapped back onto his chest. For seconds, the screen showed only static. Then a jagged line scratched across the monitor. Ventricular activity, chaotic but alive. Nurses gasped, one crossing herself. I felt my throat dry. The flatline had been replaced by a shaky song. Against every law we trusted, his heart had chosen resurrection. His wife was summoned. When she entered and saw the monitor, she dropped to her knees, sobbing, "I knew it. I told you he wasn't gone." Her voice carried both fury and relief, cutting through the sterile hum. Staff avoided her eyes, ashamed of our certainty, shaken by the undeniable. Medicine demands humility, but this was humiliation dressed as miracle. "Prepare warming blankets, IV access, fluids," I barked, forcing my shaking hands into action. His skin was cold as stone, lips cyanotic, but oxygen poured into lungs that accepted it. We were no longer caretakers of the dead. We were witnesses to a revival, and each second felt stolen, fragile, borrowed from something greater than protocol. Dialogue crackled in fragments. "This isn't possible. How long has he been gone?" 24 hours. The silence after that number was heavier than any machine's alarm. We avoided saying the word dead, as though language itself could undo what we had witnessed. But the truth loomed like a storm cloud we could not disperse. Cells deprived of oxygen typically suffer irreversible damage within minutes. The brain in particular tolerates no more than 5. Yet here was a man, cold, stiff, lifeless for a day, now showing cardiac activity. Either our science was incomplete, or something else had intervened. Both explanations terrified me. As we stabilized his vitals, his eyelids fluttered. First a twitch, then a hesitant opening. He stared straight at me with pupils that should have been fixed, and lips that cracked into a whisper. What he said made every person in that room step back in disbelief. His lips trembled before words escaped, brittle as dry leaves. It was so cold. The room froze with him. Nurses exchanged glances, one dropping a syringe in shock. Patients revived after minutes may mutter, "Yes, but 24 hours?" His voice felt like an intrusion from another world, threaded with both weakness and clarity. "Airway stable. Keep O2 high flow," I ordered, though my own oxygen felt stolen. His blood pressure fluttered on the monitor, barely measurable, a ghost of circulation. We faced a choice: treat him as a conventional patient or admit the impossible and rewrite every rule. Neither option felt safe. After prolonged cardiac arrest, reperfusion injury is the next battle. When circulation returns, toxic metabolites flood tissues, worsening damage. We debated inducing therapeutic hypothermia, cooling him further to preserve brain function. But cooling a man who had been in refrigeration for a day bordered on absurd. Yet absurdity was already our reality. "Doctor will lose him again if we wait," a resident insisted. We need aggressive intervention, another voice countered. But any procedure risks organ rupture. He's fragile beyond measure. Debate flared like static in the room. Medicine thrives on consensus, but here consensus was impossible. Every decision felt like gambling with rules no one had written. His wife stood at the door, rosary clenched so tightly her knuckles blanched. "Do everything," she whispered. Her conviction carried the weight of centuries of faith, cutting through the sterile logic of medicine. I felt caught between science and devotion, both demanding action. We inserted central access, cautiously threading catheters into frozen veins. Warm fluids trickled in, each drop defying the morgue's cold authority. Monitors beeped weakly, rhythm unstable yet present. If this works, I thought, we will become case reports, headlines, whispers in conferences. The pressure of history sat on my shoulders like lead. Dialogue fractured the tension. He shouldn't be alive, and yet he is. If he crashes, who signs the death certificate again? No one laughed. The joke felt too close to reality. The morgue had given him back, but might demand repayment at any moment. Rare reports exist of delayed auto-resuscitation, usually minutes, not hours. 24 hours stretches belief. Skeptics cite monitoring errors, premature declarations, or equipment failure. But our logs were airtight, protocols precise. If this was a mistake, it was shared by every professional in that chain. That left only one explanation. Medicine had underestimated the boundaries of life. As fluids warmed his veins and monitors steadied, his eyes opened wider. He fixed me with a gaze so sharp it felt surgical. Then, voice raw, he whispered, "You stopped too soon." The words cut deeper than any scalpel, and for a moment, none of us knew whether we were doctors or trespassers in something far greater. His whisper, "You stopped too soon," echoed in every corner of the ICU. It wasn't just a sentence, it was an indictment. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances, their hands hesitating over syringes. I tried to steady my voice. Focus on vitals, keep warming. But inside, I was unraveling. Patients don't accuse their own doctors after a day in the morgue. And yet, he had. Over the next hours, his vitals crept upward, heart rhythm stabilizing, blood pressure inching above survival thresholds. His core temperature climbed cautiously. I watched the monitors like a gambler watching dice, each beep a fragile promise. Against expectation, his lungs expanded more evenly, oxygen saturations climbing. This was no illusion. We weren't keeping him alive. He was taking back life. The brain should suffer irreversible hypoxic damage within minutes of cardiac arrest. Yet EEG monitoring showed slow but organized patterns. No flatline, no silence. Cases like this raise the possibility of protective states, akin to hibernation, where metabolism slows drastically. It's speculation more than proof, but maybe his body had found a loophole in death itself. His wife never left his side, whispering prayers that blended with the hum of machines. At one point, he turned to her, eyes still glassy, and mouthed, "I heard you." Tears streamed down her cheeks, confirming what medicine cannot measure. Connection beyond vitals, communication across the silence of death. By sunrise, he spoke again. Not fragments this time, but sentences. "I was standing in a place without sound," he said. Then I felt pulled back, like a rope tied to my chest. Staff members pretended to focus on tasks, but every ear strained to catch his words. Science avoids metaphors, yet his account carried the weight of testimony. Dialogue filled the air. "We should document this as Lazarus syndrome." "No, this is beyond that." "Then what do we call it?" No one answered. Names matter in science, but this phenomenon refused to be caged by terminology. The only certainty was that we were witnessing an event future textbooks might never dare to include. His strength grew hourly. He lifted his hand, tracing the edge of the IV line, studying his own body like a borrowed instrument. "It's strange," he whispered, "to come back." His gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time since that night, I felt less like his doctor and more like his witness. Miraculous recoveries, though rare, remind us that death is not always binary. Complex processes, metabolic reserve, delayed drug release, or even cellular resilience may blur the line. But medicine doesn't like blurred lines. It prefers certainty. And this case mocked certainty, replacing it with awe. As he regained the ability to sit upright, monitors stable, staff exhausted but electrified, one thought gnawed at me. If death can be paused, or reversed. What else have we misunderstood about the limits of life? Standing at his bedside days later, I realized medicine had no chapter for what we had witnessed. A man declared dead, cold and sealed in the morgue, had returned with breath and memory intact. The event unsettled every algorithm we trust, every rule we recite. Yet beyond the shock, there was humility. Science is vast, but life is vaster still. His recovery became both miracle and mystery. Families across the ward whispered, staff exchanged stories in disbelief, and I found myself replaying the moment he opened his eyes. Was it a delayed biological mechanism? Some hidden survival code within the human body? Or something beyond the measurable? Hope and fear walk hand in hand when death loses its grip. In the end, survival is more than statistics. It is a reminder that even in silence, life may hold on. What do you think really saved this patient's life? Science or fate? Share your thoughts in the comments. And in our next story, you'll meet a patient whose laughter nearly became deadly.